What's up guys, Rising Am Disc Golf here, and we are back for another video. Today we're going to be doing a review of the Dynamic Discs Sargent. Let's go. So like you guys heard, this is going to be a review of the Dynamic Disc Sargent. The Sargent is the new sort of hybrid speed driver for Dynamic Discs for 2020. It's a speed 11, glide 4, turn 0, and a fade of 2.5. Today I'm going to be reviewing the first run Lucid and the special edition Moonshine. And right off the bat, starting with the profile, these have a very comfortable rim in the hand. Not too big and not too small. They're right in between that Getaway and Raider speed and feel range. So the rim isn't too thick, it's not too deep either, so if maybe something like the Getaway doesn't quite fit around, it's a little too deep, you might like this because as we'll get to later, they do have a very similar flight. The Sargent in both these plastics has a pretty flat top, which makes it, for me, feel very good for forehand. And like I said, these discs do compare really well to the Dynamic Discs Getaway, which is actually a speed 9, but that has more glide. So for me, they go around the same distance. This one's just a little faster, a little less glide. This one's a little more overstable too, I would say. Depending on what Getaways you throw, Sargent might be a little more stable. So looking at like the profile, it's got that winged edge. It's a pretty flattened curve though. It's not a very sharp or steep curve because it's a shallower rim. And like I said, there isn't a whole bunch of dome. So overall, it's a very comfortable disc. The Moonshine has just a little bit more of like a rise on the outside of the flight plate. It's not domey at all, but it's just got a little more of a rise, and it is just a little tick more overstable. So moving on to the flight, both these discs fly very similarly in the two different plastics. Like I said, the Moonshine is just a tick more overstable. So when I threw the Lucid flat, it would go straight for a really long time, but it would never turn. It would go straight and have a pushing fade. It wouldn't dump. Its fade is a pushing fade, so it doesn't dump like something that's really overstable. But when you get a Felon a little beat in, how it kind of pushes its fade, that's similar to how the Sargent fades. Very similar to a Getaway again. When it's thrown with a hyzer, it can like kind of come up a little bit depending on what kind of wind you throw it into, but it will never think about flipping over. It's a reliable driver, and it'll pop up and then carry that pushing fade to the left. So it's a very good distance hyzer, while still keeping that lower speed control. We're not gonna, like a Raider can go far, but sometimes they can get a little squirrely into winds. These are definitely trustworthy into winds. Some of these throws, as you can see, were thrown into a little bit of a headwind, and none of them got super out of control, flipped over. They always faded back, so very true to the numbers. And when I threw the Lucid on an hyzer, it actually held it a really long ways and got a lot of distance, but it also faded out. So it wasn't trying to flex out immediately, but it does have that fade at the end. I think the reason why the numbers are pretty accurate, the speed's spot on, the fade is a good, it's a glide of 4 for sure, because it doesn't have as much as say a Getaway or an Escape. And then it doesn't have any turn, because when you throw it flat, it's just going to go super straight with fade. But it's not a 3 fade, because it's got, Getaways have a little more bite like Lucid ones. I would compare this a lot to a Fusion Getaway. So I know for me, the Getaway feels really good in my hand, and I really like to throw it a lot. So if I bag a Sargent, it will be for forehands, because the Getaway's dome isn't great for forehands, and it's just like a little longer than my Felon. And the Moonshine is very similar to everything I just described for the first run Lucid, just a little extra fade. So when it's thrown flat, it'll start fading a little earlier. When it's flexed, it'll come out just a little more, and when it's on a hyzer, it won't tip up quite as much. But not any different in the feel. Obviously the Moonshine's got a little more tack, but not too much of a difference. And yeah, these Sargents are really comfortable in the hand. They go really far, but not too far. They're still very controllable. So I think what this disc is good for that more advanced player or even a pro player. I don't think this is a great beginner disc just because it's a little higher speed and overstable. It's a very good hybrid control driver for if maybe the getaway would go a little too straight for you and the Raider could get the distance but maybe too much distance, or it gets a little squirrely. I think the Sargent fits right in between there at that 11 speed hybrid control driver distance. Oh, one last thing. When I threw the Sargent for forehands, I don't have a very powerful forehand, but I can manage. On an Anheuser, it would flex out and fade. On a flat line, it would go straight and then fade. It's what's expected from the flight numbers. Like I said, I don't have a very powerful forehand. Those throws were not that great. I can usually throw a little further than that, but felons will do that just a little shorter, and so the Sargent goes just a little further. So if you're a power forehand thrower, I think you could still get some good lines out of this because it does have that fade back. Also, it does feel good for backhand, so if I didn't like the getaway so much, I would probably throw the Sargent, but I do recommend you go out and test it yourself because the feel is a lot different than the getaway. This is a lot flatter and a lot shallower, so if you don't like the dome or the depth of the getaway, I definitely recommend trying the Sargent. So guys, let me know what you guys think of the Sargent down below in the comments. Make sure to give this video a like, subscribe, turn that bell for notifications, and make sure you stay safe during these tough times. So guys, you can subscribe over there clicking that channel icon. Go ahead and check out some of the other videos I've recommended for you over there. Until next time, peace.